Okay, so it is August 2nd at 11 a.m. and I will call this City of Lacey Transportation Committee meeting to order. It looks like we have an agenda, a one-item agenda. I could entertain a motion to approve said agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda as written.
All right, and I've seen the agenda too, and I will second that motion. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. So it looks like today we'll be having a Transportation Benefit District 2021 annual report. And who will be reporting today? Okay, we will have Brian Petrin, our civil engineer, reporting today for the TBD 2021 annual report. Please, Brian.
All right, so people viewing from home, do we see a title screen?
We could see your slides.
Okay,
You can minimize the people so they can see the full slides. There you go.
If you do have a question, please speak up. I won't be able to see you.
all right, so let's get started. What the Public Works team and I have prepared for the council today is the 2021 Transportation Benefit District presentation. We'll go over the annual financial summary, completed project list, completed projects map, PCI rating, history, and some budget scenarios. 2021 projects, 2021 overview, some 2022 projects, and 2023 and beyond. This is a financial sheet prepared by our finance department that shows the total revenues from the TBD sales tax, as well as our expenditures this year. And then at the bottom, it will show the fund balance, which is the current value that it's at, which is $5.8 million. Revenues were 4.8 million for this last year, and the expenditures were 4.1 million. This is a chart showing the history of TBD project and what we've done since its implementation in 2017. The target goal early on was about $1.8 to $2 million a year up until about 2020. And then 2021, since the fund was getting a little rich, we decided to bump up our spending. And we've done a grand total of 40 lane miles of roadway and spent a total of $10 million so far. Here's a map showing TBD projects. The colors are associated with the years they were done. The goal of this map is to show that we're trying to reach all parts of Lacey, not just isolate our projects in a certain area. As you can see, we've done projects in the northeast, southeast, downtown area, and we'll continue to try to pick projects all over the city to try to reach a wider spread of our tax base. Our average PCI score is on the left here. It's just a pavement condition index. It shows a grade from 0 to 100 about the condition of our roadways. Generally, we've been about 82 to 83 for the past 10 years, which in comparison to other municipalities is what I'd say very good. I mean, people like to refer to our roads as driving on gold. So our roadway network is something we take a lot of pride in, and we put a lot of time in maintaining it. On the right-hand side here, this is pulled directly from last year's State of the Streets report. We use a program called Street Saver to run budget scenarios to show what spending a certain amount does to the PCI of our network. Scenario 1 is an unfunded scenario. Obviously, we're not spending any money. And excuse me, these are run for 10 years. So the PCI score at the end of the 10-year period for an unfunded scenario would drop our BCI from the 83 that it's at to 65. Scenario 2 was the initial spending goal of $2 million. If we spent that for the 10 years of it, we dropped from 83 to 72. To maintain that current 83 would cost about $7 million a year. And then scenario 4 is an unconstrained budget, which is a little over the top, but it shows you if you want to get all of your roads in the very good category where they don't need any maintenance and spend all that money to get there and maintain it, it would cost about 11.2 million per year. Going into the projects we did in 2021, the first project here is the 2021 overlay, which was Marvin Road from the Main Street roundabout to Britton Parkway roundabout. Also Willamette Drive from the Marvin roundabout to Hogan Bay roundabout. He's over here. Orion Drive, the entire limit of the road. And alongside that, we fixed a lot of failing valve and manhole patches throughout the city, which turned out to be 96 valves and 28 manholes. And we do that typically every year baked into our TBD program. So, and these are pictures of the road before. This was Marvin. You can tell there was a lot of mastic put down. Our street maintenance crew was out there a lot trying to fix the defects that were showing. They were getting pretty elevated. This is the road being constructed and then the final product. This is Marvin again, and this was Orion. And in total, this was 2.9 lane miles. Next project in 2021 was the Carpenter Road overlay. This was a Carpenter Road reconstruction from Mullen at the south, where the county finished their roundabout project. We matched into their limits all the way up to 20, a little bit north of 26 Court, where our city limits end. And this pavement was in very poor shape. As you can tell by the picture there, it was becoming unsafe to drive. Obviously, the worst first approach in preventative maintenance isn't necessarily the best dollar for dollar, but when roads get this poor, you almost have to do them from a safety standpoint. So from an efficiency standpoint, doing really poor roads is technically not the best route, but you have to weigh in safety factors sometimes, and this was part of the case.
Now, on that project, the utilities department actually did something in conjunction with you guys at the same time, right?
They did. We had a water line that went in, I believe, from about 33rd up through the county portion, and a sewer line as well. And then what happens there is the utility will pay for the portion of the street that their utility is in. Since it was two utilities, they paid for the whole street there because one would go on one side of the road, one would go on the other. But if it was just, say, one utility like a water line, and they do one side of the street, they'd be eligible to pay for, or they would be obligated to pay for that half street, and then TBD funds would pick up the other half of the road. Or if it was a 3-lane section, TBD would pick up 2 lanes. So that's how it goes with utility projects, conjoined with TBD funding. And then, as I said before, this is a before.
Here.
Councilmember Stedman?
I was just saying, with the fair going on, everybody's probably a lot happier that that work got done.
Great.
It looks definitely much better than it used to.
I actually do have a question about TBD funds, and this might be a question for Scott, or maybe one of you guys know. So TBD funds, are we able to use those for right-of-way acquisition?
No, TBD funds.
No.
For.
Just for road work?
It is for, and it's specifically for maintenance as well. So we cannot use it for building any new roads or any new sidewalks. It is specifically only for maintenance or repair of existing roads and existing sidewalks.
Gotcha. Okay, just want to make sure we're clear on that.
Moving on to another 2021 project was our Slurry Seal program. We slurried many neighborhoods near Yelm Highway and Ruddle. They included Emerald Heights, Lake Hills, Thornbury Meadows, Sunset View Estates, Patterson Park, Strawberry Fields, Echo Glen, Sterling Point, and Lake Point. This accounted for 152,550 square yards of type 2 slurry and about 14.88 lane miles in total. The key thing to note here is with the slurry, it costs about a little over $2, like $2.25 per square yard of application. And a complete rebuild of a residential street will cost you about $26 a square yard. Might be a little elevated now based on material cost too. So when you see roads with minor defects start to form, slurry would be a cost-effective option to try to buy a few years of life in your road before you have to rebuild it. So you're putting off, I guess not necessarily putting off construction, but you're delaying construction and saving money by doing that delay and rehydrating the surface, giving it a better friction course.
Yeah, I thought it turned out great. I got my car off the street in time, you know. Some of the slurry did end up in my driveway, but
Yeah,
washed away really quick.
it's messy, it's not perfect, but when the application goes done right and you pick the correct roads for it, it typically lasts 5 to 8 years. And a lot of the stuff that we put down in the past is even going on 10 years and it still looks like it's pretty effective. So it's turning out to be a really cost-effective treatment. And we're planning on trying to keep this around for future years as well.
And we own the equipment or we rent it?
That is actually contractors'
That's
equipment.
contractor's equipment.
So we essentially put together a bid package for contractors to bid on, and obviously we're governed by a little bit at that point. Whoever wins it, they bring in their machinery, they plan it out and put their traffic control out there and go from there.
Okay, so we wouldn't be looking to buy or
Not-
strictly outsourcing. kind of a job.
It'd be nice, but not likely.
Okay.
Alongside the road work done in 2021 with TBD funds, the city did 2,120 square yards of sidewalk panel repair. And that was joined between the 2020 project that carried over into 2021 and part of the 2021 project that's going to carry over into 2022. So you'll see the 2021 project in the 2022 report because it'll use funds from that year's TBD. And the sidewalks done would be in Avonlea neighborhood, phase 1 and phase 2, as well as El Hada and 10th Avenue near Pacific and the golf club roundabout. 2,120 square yards of sidewalk repair is about 765 by 5 panels, just to give you kind of a scale of how much sidewalk was actually done. So it's quite a bit.
Mhm.
In summary, in 2021, we spent about $4.1 million of TBD funds, used 19,360 tons of fiber reinforced pavement, put down 5.8 miles of striping, a little over 9,300 raised pavement markers for enhanced visibility.
Can we go back to fiber reinforced?
Sure.
To that, I don't. What is that?
It's an additive you add to HMA to make it bind together a little bit better and resist early onset cracking and rutting. So what they do is they're almost like clumps of fiber, an aramid fiber.
Aramid, it's the same material it's used in like Kevlar vests. And so it helps the tension of the asphalt. So that it helps they say it can increase the life expectancy by like 40%.
Nice.
Is it sort of like putting straw in brick?
Yeah, but yes, but and it
Something
definitely
that holds it together.
And so we actually have a great, unfortunate, but real life experience with this. So we have out on Hogan Bay Road. I'm not sure, I don't think that you guys were here when this happened, but we had a water break on Hogan Bay Road where we had just finished installing this fiber reinforced asphalt. And normally when you'd have a water break, the asphalt, it would be more localized, the damaged. And then in this case, we just installed this mat and it lifted up the whole entire, mat of asphalt for maybe 300 feet down the road. And they had to get in there with, a jackhammer, and it it was quite difficult to actually, jackhammer that area out and remove the asphalt because it's just been installed. So it's really tough material. And we've had
So it didn't,
success installing.
you guys were able to extract the water and preserve, is it?
No, we had to end up replacing about 300 feet of roadway
Oh,
with that water line break that
Okay.
happened. But the material itself is very strong, really great material. And we're seeing, we've been using it since about 2015
Mhm.
or so, and it's fairly minimal cost when you look at the overall cost of the material. We're seeing somewhere in the range of about $10 per ton or so on average. But the testing showing that it's increasing lifespan by 40%. So the cost to value ratio, seems like it's a pretty great deal.
nice. Okay.
Yeah, especially on highly traveled roads that see a lot of traffic. Obviously, the more traffic you see, the more distresses you'll see earlier on, and the fiber will help hold the pavement together and keep the fines in, because that's the big thing with your pavement is losing your fines. Because once the fines go, then your aggregate gets exposed and then it's less interlocked. So what the fiber does is it helps bind those fines and bind the aggregate together and resist early onset cracking and rutting. So
Yeah,
typically the studies show it's at least 5 years of early onset cracking, give or take.
Because some of our roads have just a lot of truck travel.
Yeah.
you know,
Right, so
like
yeah,
Marvin.
we typically don't put fiber in, if we're doing a project that's just a small residential neighborhood, we typically won't add it there. But if we're doing any paving work that is on, a truck route or arterial, College or Hogan Bay, any of these,
Heavier travel
yeah,
roads.
right, and any of these truck routes, anything like that.
Spend the extra, get the extra life out of it.
Yep, any of our roundabouts, all of those projects will have it. in there.
Yeah, another thing we do is we do a higher quality oil in those roads too, where it's called bumping the oil, where it's just a better quality. It helps bind together better. It's a little denser, so it'll resist the rutting from those heavy truck tires and heavy traffic loads. So we look into a lot of things to help keep those roads in good condition. So there's some preventative measures you can do just by mixed design,
Gotcha.
and that's part of fiber.
All right, thanks.
I think I was at the 96 failed valve and failed manhole patches repaired citywide. As I said, that's a yearly program that the city has as well, where every year our shop gives us a list of failed valve and manhole patches, the ones you run over and think you're gonna lose a tire to.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, we get out and we try to fix those, and the 2,120 square yards of new sidewalk.
So where did I don't need specifics, but that's a fair amount of new sidewalk. That's replacement sidewalk? That's not brand new?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sidewalk quantities, they add up quite quick, because when you think about it, your typical panel is a 5x5 panel, 6x6 panel.
Yeah.
And then for each one of those panels, that's about 3 to 4 square yards.
Yeah.
So,
We outsource that too.
Right. On this one, we had Aladef and 10th, which were 10-foot sidewalk panels. So those increase the quantity pretty quickly.
Gotcha.
yeah, it's a surprising lot of cost for new sidewalk as well. It shocks a lot of people when they say, why don't you just put sidewalk on this street? And then you give them the sticker price, and then they're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
When I do construction loans, that people are always surprised at how much, the concrete for the foundation costs.
Exactly.
And they go from from wanting a 3,000 square foot Rambler, that footprint, to, well, maybe we can't have a 2-story. Kind of a vibe sometimes.
Very similar. Getting into this year's TBD, which wouldn't be part of the 2021 TBD report, obviously, but this is just for this presentation, showing the projects that we will be getting into this year. First one being our 2022 overlay program, that would be designated by this map right here, showing all the locations. And once again, we try to hit a lot of different areas in the city with these programs.
That picture makes me think of Rainier Road, of course.
That is
That is Rainier Road. I know that it's either Mullen or Rainier, and it looks like Rainier. So what's the plan for, diverting the water, the I guess the aftermath of, the water over the roadway for however many days we had that. And we were talking about how we're not sure, if there's a place for that water to go, how do we prevent this from happening again?
I
I
know.
can respond to that.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so in terms of water flow, you have to look at both your upstream and downstream channels. And downstream is incredibly flat. There is no way to prevent this. It just is what it is. It only happens about once every 10 years. So in terms of the cost of rechannelization and all the environmental impacts that would go with it, there's not a cost benefit there that would bring this to the, well, it's really not feasible. But then if you wanted to consider doing it, in terms of cost benefit, it would not rank anywhere near a priority to.
Wouldn't make the list. Well, okay, so what about, like some neighborhoods have their big retention areas. I guess if we wanted or to create a retention area in that area, we'd have to first buy that from somebody. Because we don't really own anything outside of the, 8 to 10 feet outside of the road itself. That's
Yeah,
all.
so a retention area would only delay this. When you look at the basin that the rain falls into, the volume of the basin and the flow rate of that, a retention detention basin would only buy you time, and then that would still happen.
Yeah. I mean, we should
We're fighting Mother Nature.
build
here,
a
which is
filtration system.
really tough. And what we tried to do with the pavement design is there's certain techniques you can do with the base. Use a base with less fine, so there's less pumping underneath the roadway. So you don't see failures like this as often. I wouldn't say you won't see failures like this at all, but it helps mitigate the risk by being more porous and letting the water freely flow through it.
Yeah.
Because when the water comes up, it comes up all the way to the bottom of your pavement in that area when it's flooded.
Yeah, I love driving my Jeep through it, you know what I mean? Pick up some speed, see if we can, but it does seem like something that we.
Yeah, that's unfortunately, like Scott said, a battle that we probably can't win without throwing a lot of money at it. So,
Raise the roadway with the trestle there.
well, and raising the roadway, you bring in other issues as well too, so.
I was like, let's dig a big old pit. And maybe we can dig deep enough and shallow enough, or should I say deep enough and big enough to retain some water, but I guess we'd have to acquire something to do that first, but the cost would just be ridiculous.
Yeah, bridges, channels, and streams were my life for quite a few years, so this is something I know a lot about.
Yeah, okay. Maybe it'll work itself out sometime in the next 20 years. We'll see how that goes. Continue on.
Maybe we won't have as much rain. We'll cross our fingers. But with the overlay program, we're gonna cover 3 sections of Marvin Road, Galaxy, Quinault, and the I-5 roundabout, 14th Avenue, Campus Highlands Drive, Royal Street, Nelson Road, and then a portion of the Arbors neighborhood. And the estimated cost of that is $2.4 million. As we were talking about the Rainier Road pavement repair, where the rainfall flooded the roadway, ended up pumping the road and removing our top lift. Our street maintenance crew was on it and put down a good patch that's holding up. But we have to get something more permanent out there to fix the problem fix in air quotes, because if this happens again, it might just open up eventually again. But we're trying to mitigate that with the best practices available to us.
Sure. Gotcha.
And as I said before, valve and manhole repair. This is a yearly program going out and repairing manholes and valves patches across the city. More sidewalk replacement at 6th Ave, Sleater Kinney, Parkside, and Rosewood Willow Crossing neighborhood, and that comes out to be about $450,000 of sidewalk.
So these are projects that are going on right now, or that are going to be done by the end of the year, or these are slated for
Both.
They're about to start.
Yes.
They've all been awarded and we're in the process of executing contracts on all of them.
Gotcha.
And then that's a good question because going into the next slides are projects that got delayed due to material shortages where they're not out to add yet. So the dollar values on them are a little speculative.
Sure.
But one of those projects is another portion of Carpenter Road from Woodland Trail down to the end of Ruland's property, our right of way limit. This was supposed to go out in spring, but there was a approximately 6-month delay on the pipe because there was a water line that needed to go into Carpenter before we do the construction, because doing it the other way around is not standard practice. And
Where are Pacific and Martin in relation to that?
Pacific is right here.
Okay, so that is what I'm thinking of. Oh, okay, so that's the bus barn area that we talked about
Bus
earlier
barn
this
would be
year.
down here.
All right, got it.
So we want to avoid the situation where we have the 6 months delay and then we're trying to pave in December.
Right.
So that's why we're gonna hold off on advertising this until probably October. So
Yeah, I
that-
remember you saying at one of our meetings that this will be preferably a next spring project.
Mhm.
Or was it you said that?
That helps give the contractor a better idea of what they're looking at too, where if we sent it out in spring and there was a 6-month delay on pipe and they wouldn't know when they get it, they potentially have a high pipe cost in their bid. And then at the point that they do it, we need to put a price escalator or asphalt price adjustment in our bid as well, because the price of asphalt could potentially change.
When we do the escalator, is there like a percentage or limit that we have? Let's say, for example, you know, it bids out in October for the spring. Well, between October and spring, something happened and the cost of goods adjusted for whatever reason. Do we keep them at a cap, like a 5 or 10% cap, or how does that?
Currently, the only cost escalation that's kind of built into our specs is for asphalt. It's the standard Department of Transportation. They also have one for fuel costs that we can add. And those are just based on, you know, they will have the standard oil prices and you're paying whatever that market value is for that
'Cause
oil.
If they say, hey, we'll do this project for 2.9 million, and then the final invoice, you know, adds up to 3.2 million. You know,
Right, when it comes to asphalt, I mean, what they do is they give you the cost per ton of asphalt and we're awarding it to the low bidder. So, you know, they give you the top, so for the asphalt cost escalation clause in there, you know, you're awarding it to the low bidder. So, you know, you're already getting your best price for asphalt. But you adjust that base price based on the change in cost from the time that they bid it until the
Oh,
time that you're
okay.
actually able to pave. And so, and the state sets those rates. So the contractor doesn't set those rates, the state does. And you're able to look in what the change in the cost of oil is, that oil index price from the time of bid to the time of actual
Okay, so,
paving, and look at what the fair, you know, value is of that. So there's not a cap on it, because you're paying what that actual cost is of that oil. you know,
right, so if they have their cost plus their margin, you know, the margin will stay the same, but the cost could vary a little bit.
Yeah, there's a specific formula that you pay, and so it's actually fairly common. We pay it all the time. It's built into the bids, and so I mean, I can't say it's ever happened, but there could be a scenario where we actually get a credit, you know, because the oil costs go down.
Okay.
So that's
So
a
we
possibility
we
too.
pay per quantity on the asphalt used, but if they, in theory, underbid their margin, they would eat that cost. It doesn't change our
Wow,
contract agreement.
okay, sounds like a tough business. Sorry.
Oh, it's good. And this project, the total construction cost would be 2.5 million, but that includes the pipe and the portion of roadway that utility would be accountable for. For the TBD fund, it would be about $1.25 million. Also along those lines are our 2022 overlay utility improvements project, which got delayed because of materials as well. That would be a portion of Marvin Road. This is down by Carpenter, the new county roundabout, and Afterbaugh, and the train trestle.
Okay. Are you guys finding any place where we're not having like a supply chain? Like, is anybody fully back online? Then
Paving,
paving?
I mean, costs are high, but they're not having issues getting the material,
Okay,
so.
all right, I'm just trying to keep my eye on that.
Yeah,
because it's-
paving and concrete are about the only two materials that we haven't seen, issues with getting the actual materials. But that's not to say there's still issues with contractors finding time to do the work.
Well, yeah, that
And,
always-
there's always that complaint, right now of just shortage of workers and people to do the work, so.
And
that's-
the late start to summer too, where everybody got their papers out at the same
Right.
time. So
Yeah,
all the contractors are scrambling to get crews together and they have to jack up their prices.
sure.
But across the board, I mean, anything with, steel, so anything in the water or sewer, all of those.
Yeah, like
Types of
pipes that
materials,
have to be
yeah,
made in
anything.
Kansas or whatever.
And, we've heard that a lot of the ductile iron issues are due to the issues with Russia and Ukraine, that a lot of those materials come from those regions, so.
Okay.
So that's a factor.
As in my mind, I'm just trying to think, I know that, a lot of things are happening to, try to straighten out the supply chain but this is actually gives me more, I guess, ground level intel than I would get anywhere else, to see some actual, like, hey, this is
Yeah,
we're
and
this
then
far out on
it
this
depends
material.
on the material. Sometimes it's worse than others. On PVC, we've seen a delay. On ductile iron, it's, on PVC, it's probably more like a month or 2 months. On ductile iron, it's been more like 4 to 6 months. On some more materials like certain kinds of pumps and things like that, like at our Lift Station 49 project. I think Lift Station 49 was awarded last September, October, and we weren't able to start that project until June of this year.
Okay.
We had, like, I think it was 9-10 months delay on
Yeah,
getting materials on
Manuals and
that
bells are
project.
Still 8 weeks plus.
Right.
Electronics are 6 months to a year, in some cases. There's nothing really material wise other than concrete and asphalt that doesn't have some type of a delay still.
Okay. All right, so 1 year is not enough. We need another year and a half before we might actually see supply chains. And in my mind, I'm wondering if people are going to go back to, producing enough to where they have an inventory to put, or are they going to try to do just in time? I guess it's still kind of up in the air.
Yeah, across the board, I think on all projects, we're gonna continue to put them out to add. We're gonna, make sure that we have clauses in our contract that will allow us to put contracts on hold for materials delays, to make sure that we're encouraging contractors to still bid on our projects. Knowing that we're gonna work with them, to get those materials, and we just have to have that understanding that some of these projects, we're just gonna have to be patient and.
So when we accept their bid, right? And we're like, hey, you got the job, right? Now, do we let them source the materials, or do we source our own materials? And the reason I ask is, when I do a job, I'm like, I want to use this stuff, right? And I have to make sure a dude is like, okay with me supplying everything that's going to be needed. Hey, you can check my list. If there's anything that you want to work with that you don't see here, let me know, and I'll get that, and I'll make sure that it's on the site the day that you come out and build me a deck or whatever it is that I'm.
Yeah, so our contractors source all the materials. In general, we don't provide materials, except in very rare instances. A lot of times when it comes to warranty work and things like that, it's always best to have the contractor supply
Sure.
the materials,
But they like to
because
work.
then they're fully warranting that, that material. And also, we do a lot of projects and we don't have the storage capacity to be, buying all the materials for these projects. And then also things change, during construction And so, we don't want to end up buying materials that maybe end up, they're not getting used or things
Right,
like that. So there's multiple reasons.
Well, not only that, sourcing materials is a fun thing, right?
Right, and we'd probably need a whole person, and we need a whole another full-time employee just to deal with the purchasing and procurement of, materials then on top of that, so.
Yeah,
What we do require is any materials they bring onto a job site, they have to submit a request for approval of those materials. So
Okay.
everything that they're installing is screened for.
I'm not at the city level yet where I can just say, bring your stuff, I
And
still,
there's certain things outlined in our specs where we'll provide them, say, a brand of a certain product or approved equal. And that goes into the material approval, or they'll submit the product and we'll look at it and be like, yay or nay.
okay. All right. Sorry, you guys, I'm not trying to stretch this out. I just
That's good.
have questions.
In addition to Mullen, with this project, there is 7th Avenue from Slater Kinney to Golf Club Road from 7th down to where the improvements a number of years ago ended. Golf Club Place, the buses from the bus stop are beating down on it. That needs to be replaced. 14th Avenue from Slater Kinney to College, and Front Street between the couplet, Lacey Boulevard and Pacific. And all
Is
of
is the work outside of the bus area gonna interfere with like bus service?
we would be required to maintain access for them. So during construction, the roadway may be torn up, but we'd have it flagged and their driveways would remain accessible.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
And then the timeline on a project like that is days, weeks?
For any particular street, I mean, they could probably get like the street in front of the bus barn. I mean, they could probably get that, ground up in one day and maybe paved in another. But, we'd have to look at the area and sometimes work like that. If we're not in a residential area, sometimes we'll do that work at night. But we have contacts within, inner city transit, North Thurston School District. So whenever we're paving in areas like that, we work closely with the stakeholders around the area to make sure we're not impacting business or bus routes or things like that. So
It'll likely be weeks of disruption though with
Right.
utilities going in first and patching and
Right.
shutdowns.
yeah,
before
the
paving.
the paving portion itself usually goes pretty quickly, but
Yeah.
the utility work will take longer.
The good thing about that portion is there's no utility work in that segment. It's over on 7th from about here to Slater Kinney. So that should be quick work.
Okay,
Construction estimate on this project is about $2.5 million with 1.75 million of that being TBD. Beyond 2022, looking at everything 2023 to effectively the end of this 10-year cycle of TBD, is this map over here. The projects in blue are projects that we have selected to be repaved in 2023. Some of them have utilities as well, such as down off of 33rd Ave and 33rd Loop and 36th and the courts down here. There's a water line that goes into that. So part of the roadway would be covered by the utility itself, but TBD funds would obviously pick up the other half of the roadway. So in our 2023 plan, we have the Britain Gateway Roundabout, Rainier Road, a little portion of 70th Way, Balustrade Roundabout, and 66th. 33rd Ave, 33rd Loop, 34th Avenue, there's a sunken portion. We're looking at fixing 36th Avenue and the 5 cul-de-sacs off of it. Emerald Hills neighborhood down by our Slurry seal, down towards Yelm Highway and Ruddle. 37th Ave and Lake Crest, our street maintenance crews are having a tough time holding together 37th Avenue, so we're gonna patch it up for them and do the neighborhood nearby. That pavement is starting to fail. And then 8th Avenue, where am I, above Slater Kinney, going into the CDC property. And also with the paving work, we'll be doing sidewalk repair on 33rd Court, 45th Avenue, between the roundabout and Chehalis Western.
Looks like Councilmember Vasquez, you have a question?
I just wanted to mention real quick, just to keep in mind, we have just done very preliminary scoping on these, so this is not, these areas are kind of just our preliminary scoping ideas for potential areas next year. This is definitely not a like guaranteed, we're going everywhere here next year. This is kind of our preliminary, kind of ideal list for next year, so.
It's to give us
Your first pass.
Right, our first pass, yeah, so. It might
Um,
look a little bit different when we get to the actual design, so.
I was just curious. I see that, I think that's Martin. We have a chunk of Martin Way identified for a future project.
Yeah.
When we're gonna do Martin, just the part of it that Lacey contains, are we coordinating with Olympia or the county so that, you know, the transitions between the jurisdictions all have a similar quality of roadway? Like, do we have those conversations when we plan projects like this?
Well, in this portion, we'd be just looking at refreshing the paving. We're not making any changes to the roadway itself. If that was chosen as a project. And so whether or not, you know, the Olympia or Thurston County, you know, chose to do a project in their area, that's sort of a separate issue. As far as the transition goes, you know, we're not necessarily making a change to the roadway there. We're just kind of doing this as part of this TBD. It would be that we're just making a repair basically to the roadway that's there.
Because that's all we can do with these dollars, but I think.
Right,
what
so this
Councilmember
isn't like doing a widening or making any like changes.
Right, it's repaving, yeah.
What you're talking about, you're thinking of like if they've done a corridor study on Martin.
I know that we are in the midst of a corridor study, but I don't know, it just doesn't seem like the best way to designate the borders of the jurisdictions to have really nice road in one spot and then like not nice road in the moment that you enter the county space. So I don't know if there's coordination happening. It sounds like perhaps not on simple
I
stuff
can-
like this.
If I can speak to that, you know, the different agencies have different funding mechanisms and different priorities. So, I mean, we can tell them we're going to do this when it's the best timing for us. You know, and I mean, it's no secret, our pavement condition index is much better than both Thurston counties and Olympia's. So I don't think we would want to default to, there again, we have.
I'm not suggesting we wait for them, but we can at least
Yeah.
say, hey, you know, in November of 2024, we're going to be repaving Martin, so that
Yeah.
if they were thinking about it
No.
anyway, it could be.
Now, with that said, we have coordinated with Thurston County. We coordinated with them on the Carpenter Road overlay last week. So we do that. But if they have funding available, or if they have a project where it works for us and we have funding available, yes, we do coordinate.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
Yes, yeah, for example, like last year on the Carpenter Road project, there was a portion of Carpenter Road that we actually paved for the county, then they reimbursed us for their portion of those costs. So yes, so I'm sorry, I misunderstood, but yes, we do coordinate with them in those types of situations just to make sure. And there are sometimes, you know, vice versa, like there's been other times on Carpenter Road where they were doing some patching work and they'll come do some patching in the city and we reimburse them. So we do have interlocal agreement with Thurston County for work like that we coordinate with them.
You know, there's a development, a new building right there on Martin Way, just past Carpenter Road, right next to, I think, a property that Councilmember Stedman owns. And it looks like, from what I could tell, it looks like the county, they poured a new, you know, sidewalk there and really kind of updated that frontage. And so that, it appears to me that's what the county had them do it looks like they're trying to line up with our standards a little bit more than they were before. Just like in front of Winco. And I think that's how the theme is trying to be carried out, but the study is going to help solidify that all across the spectrum, is from what I.
In addition to that, a lot of the major through fairs like Martin, Pacific Lacey Boulevard, Couplet, Stillicum, Yelm Highway, Rainier Road. There's other avenues of funding the project too. We could get grant funding for a lot of those streets. And that's the reason why sometimes we typically try to patch them together instead of redo them and do a grind and inlay or rebuild on those, because there is other funding avenues where federal grant or something of the sort would pay for that, so.
All right.
And then with that, that is the end of my presentation.
Okay.
So if there are any more questions, feel free to ask.
You guys, yeah, you can stop sharing your screen, and then, there we go, we got everybody. Hey, Mike. Okay, so does anybody have any?
I don't have any questions, Malcolm. I'm pretty familiar with most of the projects, so have the highest of faith in the public works department, especially when it comes to our roads and our transportation. So, yeah, they do a great job.
Testament to your guys' work. So if that's all we have, then I'll let you guys get out of here and get some lunch. With that, without any objection, let's call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.